Hey man, good morning. It's your boy Butler. Oh man, God, stay out of prison, man. Freedom is a choice. Make the right decision. So now, today, we're going inside the Georgia prison system. Not physically, but factually. Because you know there's a lot of things that's going on inside the Georgia Department of Corrections. There's an active war going on right here, and there's an active war going right there, and people are being unalived, and people are overdosing off drugs. We have seen the explosion. So let's dive off into how this explosion came to be. But more importantly, let's talk about a solution that the Georgia Department of Corrections actually may have right. I'm not absolutely sure, but I'm just thinking out loud. So now, this report is not about pretending that everybody in prison is innocent. I've been there myself. I've had the Kool-Aid. I've walked the block. And this is not about ignoring victims of crimes. It's not about making excuses for violence. That's not what I'm on, bro. It is about asking a simple question. When the state of Georgia takes custody of a human being, can the state keep that person alive, control its own institution, protect its employees, and prepare people to return home better than they entered? See, I went to Chain Gang years ago, 20 to be exact. Well, 30. Been home 20. And this is no disregard for any race or body of people or any of that. But it was some good old boys that was running the Georgia Department of Corrections that would put a foot so far in your ass that you would start to see the light. Yeah. They'll kick your ass. They'll beat your ass. Yeah. And you'll start to drink the Kool-Aid. But what I'm telling you, as an individual who was once rebelling, and I still rebel to one degree or another, hey man, I got kicked in the ass a few times, and it helped me get my shit together. I'm just being honest with you. I said what I said. I'm just being honest with you. Now, because prison, it's supposed to be punishment, being stabbed is not a part of that sentence. Being sexually assaulted is not a part of that sentence. Being extorted by a gang is not a part of that sentence. Being left without medical treatment is not a part of that sentence. And dying from drugs that never should have entered a secure facility is not supposed to be a part of the sentence. On October 1st, 2024, the United States Department of Justice released the result of a multi-year investigation in Georgia prisons. Federal investigators concluded that Georgia was failing to protect incarcerated people from widespread violence and serious harm. At that time, the system held approximately 50,000 people in 34 state-operated prisons and 4 private prisons, giving Georgia the fourth largest state prison population in these United States. Let that sink in. That was not a Facebook rumor. That was not a man calling home from a contraband cell phone complaining because he did not like prison. This was the United States Department of Justice examining records, visiting facilities, and interviewing staff, interviewing incarcerated people, and reviewing years of incidents. And what investigators described was a system where shortages in staffing, broken security practices, contraband, gangs, and poor accountability were feeding off one another. The first danger: Georgia does not have enough officers. A prison without enough correctional officers is not simply understaffed. It is an uncontrolled environment. I'm telling you from my personal experiences that we would have 2 to 3 officers working the dorm at all times. Most of the times, there was somebody on the floor. I'm not saying that we need to oversee us as slaves. What I'm saying is that the police presence made a difference. It gave weak individuals like myself an opportunity to read a book, to go to trade school, to rehabilitate. Yeah. And apparently, it calls for those people who were a tad bit more on the aggressive side to lower their aggression. Yeah. Now, according to the federal findings, Georgia's system-wide correctional officer vacancy rate was above 50% for much of the period investigators examined. In April 2023, the vacancy rate reached approximately 60%, leaving more than 2,800 officer positions unfilled. At 12 medium and closed security prisons, the vacancy rate was above 70%. By the end of 2023, the state still had more than 2,800 unfilled correctional officer positions. Think about that. That means, in practical terms, it means officers are not only watching one dormitory, they may be responsible for multiple buildings. It means required rounds may not happen. Thus, dead bodies in the room for 3 or 4 days. It means a fight can begin and continue before anybody with authority reaches it. I have displayed on this channel where you actually have people inside calling the police like, man, we ain't seen no officer in a while. It's a body laying right here that's not moving. We need help. It means medical staff may enter dangerous units without sufficient security. It means one officer may be responsible for hundreds of incarcerated people during a 12-hour shift. The Department of Justice reviewed an example in which officers were assigned to supervise 2 buildings at once. In one case, a single officer was effectively responsible for nearly 400 beds. In another incident, a man was stabbed 32 times in his back, head, and stomach. The next day, staffing in the building remained dangerously inadequate. You cannot run a dangerous prison on skeleton crews and motivational slogans. A radio does not replace another officer. A camera does not physically separate 2 men fighting with knives. A locked control booth does not help when nobody is inside that mother. You hear me? And when the state cannot control dormitories, somebody else will. That somebody may be the strongest individual in the unit. It may be the person with the most weapons. It may be the gang with the largest numbers. Or it may be the individual controlling the supply of drugs, cell phones, and money. That is how authority shifts. The uniforms may belong to the state, but the power on the floor belongs to whoever can enforce consequences. You heard me? The second danger, violence has become an operating condition. Caramel macchiato, me please. Now, from January 2022 through April 2023, federal investigators identified more than 1,400 reported violent incidents across Georgia's closed security prisons and most of its medium security prisons. These included fights, assaults, hostage situations, and homicides. Approximately 19.7% involved weapons. 45.1% resulted in serious injuries, and 30.5% required treatment outside the prison. Investigators warned that even these numbers probably understated the true amount of violence because many incidents were not reported or were incorrectly classified. I once had a kid on my caseload, Almir Harris, who died at Baldwin State Prison on December the 31st. He was autistic and he was a diabetic. He died in the day room because he did not receive his meds. These are not ordinary prison arguments. These are hospital level injuries. These are airlifts. These are stab wounds. These are people being tied up, beaten, burned, and held against their will inside buildings that state is supposed to control. Federal investigators documented that Georgia prisons recorded 94 homicides over a 3-year period. The number reached a record 35 prison homicides in 2023, according to GDC's own reported figures. The federal report said Georgia prison's homicide rate was substantially higher than the most recent available national correctional data. Now, you and I both know, if you're paying attention to pages like Georgia Prisons Exposed, or you have a loved one in there, you know that the death rate, the death toll is way higher. I'm giving you the information that they gave me. But we both know the numbers are much higher. 35 homicides in 1 year. Man, listen to me. We had almost 45 homicides in January 2026. But They hadn't documented, so I'm not reporting it. I'm just giving you the information as it is exposed to me now. That is nearly 3 prison homicides every month. We know these numbers are low. And we have to remember that those are the deaths categorized as homicides. The federal investigators also raised concerns about the delayed investigations and discrepancies in the way deaths were classified. In 2018, Georgia reported 7 prison homicides. By 2023, the number has climbed to 35. That is not an unfortunate coincidence. That is a pattern. Dates that should never be forgotten. Let me give you these dates because sometimes numbers become so large that the public stops seeing the people behind them. On April the 5th, 2023, a man at Smith State Prison was discovered dead inside a restrictive housing unit. Investigators reported that he may have been strangled by his cellmate. The local coroner said that the body was badly decomposed and that the man had probably been dead for more than 2 days before he was found. I ain't lying. That's not what the people in Chain Gang told me. That's what the Georgia Department of Corrections is providing to the public. Don't rush past that. This was not somebody disappearing in the forest. This was a man locked inside a cell owned and controlled by the state of Georgia. How does a person remain dead for approximately 2 days in restrictive housing before the system fully recognizes what happened? That raises questions about rounds. It raises questions about supervision. It raises questions about log books. Remember those? And it raises questions about whether being placed in segregation always means that a person is actually being closely observed. On December 10th, 2023, an incarcerated person died following an altercation with his cellmate at Macon State Prison. On December 13th, 2023, an incarcerated person at Coastal State Prison died after an altercation with other incarcerated people. According to the federal report, he was scheduled to be released in 2024. Ain't that a bitch? On December 22nd, 2023, another incarcerated person died after an altercation at Telfair State Prison. 3 dates, 3 facilities, 3 human beings, and 3 families that received a message saying that somebody who was supposed to be securely confined would never come home. In March 2024, the warden of Telfair State Prison was stabbed during a disturbance following a shakedown. In June 2024, an incarcerated person at Smith State Prison reportedly used a contraband firearm to kill a food service employee and then himself. Google it. I ain't lying. A contraband gun inside a state prison. Not a homemade knife filed from a piece of metal, a firearm. That incident should destroy the comforting idea that prison walls automatically equal security. A building can have fences, razor wire gun towers, checkpoints, and steel doors, but those things are only as effective as the people, procedures, and technology surrounding them. The third danger, drugs, are operating like an underground economy. People on the outside sometimes ask, how are drugs getting into prison? That question must be asked seriously. Drugs do not manufacture themselves inside a dormitory. That's not how that works. Cell phones do not grow from concrete floors. Firearms do not fly over fences without human assistance. You heard me. Bars. Contraband can enter through visitors, employees, deliveries, corrupted officials outside conspirators, mail systems, and drones. The Georgia Department of Corrections publishes report concerning employees, visitors, and other individuals arrested in connection with contraband at its facilities. GDC states that people caught introducing or transporting contraband are subject to arrest and prosecution. But arrest alone tell us the contraband stream has already reached the gate. The larger question is how much gets through without being detected. Federal investigators described, drugs as readily available in some facilities. The report documented a man interviewed at Ware State Prison in June 2022 who said drugs were easily obtained. 4 days after that interview, he died from an overdose. Then on July 3rd, 2022, another man at Ware State Prison was found hanging over a second-floor railing. According to the federal findings, he remained there for hours because no officers were in control. And staff did not promptly enter the building. A video taken with a contraband cell phone reportedly showed his unresponsive body draped over the railing. His cause of death was acute something, toxicity. Methamphetamine. I know I'm not saying it right. Rest in peace to that brother. That one incident represents several systems failing at once. First, method entered the prison. Second, a contraband cell phone entered the prison. Third, the man suffered a medical emergency. Fourth, a staffed control center was apparently not available to produce a timely response. That is not just a drug problem. That is a security problem, a staffing problem, a medical response problem, and an accountability problem operating at the same time. In December 2025, a former correctional officer cadet pleaded guilty in federal court after attempting to take more than half a kilogram of 100% pure methamphetamine into Dooley State Prison for an incarcerated person. Half a kilogram? More than 500 grams of highly pure meth? That is not a personal use amount hidden inside a shoe. That is a trafficking level contraband. And it shows why every conversation about prison drugs has to include institutional corruption and outside networks. It is easy to blame the incarcerated population exclusively. But prisoners cannot drive to a supplier, pick up a half a kilo of meth and bring it into the employee interest. Somebody outside has to cooperate. Somebody with access has to participate, and somebody inside is expecting to profit. What the drug trade creates beyond overdoses, drug inside prisons do more cause. They do more than cause intoxication, bro. They create debt. Debt creates extortion. Extortion creates beatings. Beatings create retaliation. Retaliation creates gang conflict. Gang conflict creates emergency lockdowns. Lockdown, shutdown, classes, visitation, recreation, religious services, and medical movement. That means even the person who is not using drugs is affected by the economy. A man can borrow $50 worth of contraband and owe $200. When he cannot pay, the debt may be transferred to his mother, girlfriend, wife, or daughter. Now a family on the outside receiving threatening calls. Now money is being sent through payment apps. Now the prison economy has extended beyond the fence and entered a family's living room. Contraband cell phones also allow incarcerated individuals to communicate without routine institutions monitoring. Those phones may be used to remain connected with children and family, but they can also be used to coordinate drug deliveries, threaten witnesses, organize scams, facilitate extortion, and communicate with criminal networks outside the prison. Georgia's proposal prison improvement spending has included approximately $50 million aimed at combating illegal cell phones and drones carrying drugs, phones, and other contrabands into facility. But technology cannot be the only answer. A cell phone jamming system cannot repair a corrupt employee. A drone detector cannot solve an unmanned dormitory. A scanner cannot create integrity. The solution must include technology, staffing, intelligence, gathering, prosecution, and better working conditions so officers are less vulnerable to corruption and less tempted by illegal money. The fourth danger: gangs fill the empty spaces. I said what I said. Where legitimate control is weak, informal power grows. The Justice Department describes sophisticated prison gangs controlling black markets in drugs, weapons, and electronic devices. Federal officials said gangs had influenced matters that should belong to prison administration, including housing and bed assignments. This is one of the most dangerous points in the entire investigation because when gangs influence who sleeps where, the state has surrendered one of its most basic security functions. Classification is supposed to consider criminal history, medical needs, mental health, known enemies, gang affiliation, vulnerability, and institutional behavior. But if unauthorized groups can pressure people into cells, force relocations, and determine who belongs in a dormitory, then housing becomes another instrument of control. A person may be placed near an enemy. A vulnerable individual may be placed with a predator. Somebody attempting to leave a gang may be housed among the same group he is trying to escape. And an officer who does not have enough backup may decide that maintaining unofficial peace is safer than challenging whoever controls the unit. That may create temporary quiet, but quiet is not the same as control. Sometimes Quiet simply means that fear is working. Now, let's discuss the new prison. Georgia is constructing a new state prison near Davisboro in Washington County, behind the existing Washington State Prison. The name may sound familiar because there was a GD versus Blood War. Rest in peace to everybody that lost their life during that situation. Now, this facility is expected to hold approximately 3,000 incarcerated people. Publicly reported plans describe a campus of roughly 800,000 square feet spread across 13 buildings. Plans include housing, administration, medical intake, educational and vocational areas, and operational support buildings. The facility has been designed primarily around single-bed cells. Construction sources have listed a targeted completion around July 2026, although major project schedules can change. The Georgia General Assembly approved approximately $451 million for construction, and officials later saw another $47 million to furnish and equip it. That places the publicly identified construction and furnishing investment near $500 million before considering any future operational expenses or cost changes. This prison is not the same as another proposed future facility. In January 2025, the state also recommended spending $40 million to begin planning and designing an additional prison expected to contain approximately 1,500 single-bed cells. So, there are two separate ideas people must not confuse. The approximately 3,000-bed Washington County prison already under construction, and a second proposed prison initially discussed as roughly 1,500 cell facility, which planning money was recommended. How the Washington County prison could improve safety. First, single-person cells could reduce certain kinds of violence. Many homicides and assaults happen inside shared cells, where visibility is limited. Single-cell housing can reduce cellmate attacks, sexual abuse, forced bunking, and some forms of nighttime extortion. But a single cell only creates safety when the locks work, officers conduct rounds, a person can still be attacked in the shower, a person can still be stabbed on the yard, a person can still be pulled into another cell, a person can still overdose alone. Single cells are a tool, not a complete solution. Second, modern locking and control system could reduce unauthorized movement. So, in short, what I want to say is that you possibly have a 3,000 single cell facility being constructed, which will reduce a lot of stuff. And if y'all building this up to the point where you're not going to be able to utilize phones, drones, drugs, that reduces a lot of the issues. Y'all get in the comment section, let me know what y'all think. I am out. Freedom is a choice. Make the right decision.